Welcome to the Artful Leadership interview series.
Thank you. This is really fun.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you said yes, because I'm having so much fun just featuring the stories of so many wonderful artists who are doing really powerful work in the world. And it's just such a joy to get to know you better and kind of let the world see what you're up to. So thanks for coming along. So I know who you are, but the people who are watching might not. So why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're doing?
Yeah, so my name is Vanessa Contopulos, and I work as a music therapist. I've been a music therapist for a little over 10 years. And my path to music therapy definitely started with an interest in working. I kind of started out early out of university, out of my undergrad, doing some work in northern Uganda with former child soldiers, and that was just completely volunteer work. And but I guess my interest in music therapy really started with an interest in trauma healing and working with kids, because I've always been drawn to working with kids. And then a real interest, my family, my background, my parents they met working in special education and supporting adults with special needs. And my family has always been really connected to that community. And so that was a big part of my life as well. So it was really a natural fit that, in addition to always having this interest and these experiences in working maybe in other countries or working with trauma healing, I've also been really interested in working and supporting individuals with special needs and their families. And so, of course, the winding path it has led me to, I did my MTBC, so music board certification for music therapy. And then I went to get my master's as well in peace studies at the University of Bradford in England, where I met my husband as well. So I have a English husband and have a daughter, and we live now in the mountain area of San Diego in Julian. But I run a company, music therapy company called Amplify Music Therapy, that we do a lot of work with individuals with special needs. And then we also do more like community music therapy and work in trauma healing and education, and get to do some work with Monarch and get to do some neat work with older adults. And so it's really been it's been a really fun experience, also getting to supervise other therapists, and that's been a big learning curve for me. And so I'm sorry, this is a lot of this is a lot of information, but yeah, I guess one of my biggest parts of myself is that I have a strong desire to challenge myself and to grow and try new things. Yeah. So that's led me to, I guess, do things like start a company, or try and have an interest in how can music therapy fit in areas where it maybe it's not as natural. So being more interested in, how could it even look like in like corporate settings, or what could it look like in working more just with communities or people who wouldn't, it's a little bit more outside of the clinical setting. And then in addition to doing music therapy, I also really I've always been a performer. As a kid, I did theater and musical theater, and I sang, and I did my first degree in vocal performance. So I've always really, really loved singing and playing music. And then later into my mid and late 20s, through just more experiences of loss, losing my younger brother unexpectedly, and just going through a lot of changes and loss, I really started getting serious about songwriting and saying, okay, I'm not gonna, I guess I always had an idea that I didn't feel like I fit exactly in the music performance world, because in some ways it's very specific and but then I just really thought, you know what, this is really important to me, and it's a part of my own therapy as well. And so started writing music, and I've been enjoying that part of my creative life too, and just did another album and released it. And this one is more looking at also some of the stories I've encountered working with people, some of my own stories, and that's been really neat too. So yeah, I identify as a music therapist and a musician and a mom, and yeah, so that's me. And of course, always trying to kind of figure out a creative way to live in a way that that's nurturing, and doing the work, and being here and living in the mountains has been a really wonderful part of that, because I feel like where I live is so nurturing to me, and so I'm enjoying that as well. Looking out right now to the scenery.
Maybe you can show us the scenery. I was listening to your album this morning, and I loved your the song that's kind of about how being in the country is.
Oh, thank you.
How the different trees and all those things are like really nourishing and speaking to you. It's really lovely. So
thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, wow. So you just threw out a whole bunch of stuff. No, it's so great. So you have a really strong background of service and in traveling the world and doing things to really bring healing to communities all over the world. You've got this peace building background. You've got your music. And then I think the first time I encountered you and heard about you and Michael was when you guys were like collecting lullabies in City Heights, and so I'd love for you to talk a little bit about some of the kind of the experimental stuff with bringing music work to, you know, kind of communities that we don't usually hear from in that traditional music therapy environment. I thought that was so cool.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I know there's a whole nother special project. So myself and fellow music therapist and expressive arts therapist Talia Morales, my husband Michael, and then our friend Alex, who's a producer and great songwriter and sound engineer. We had a project for a number of years called the Song Stream Project, and one of the pieces that we did that was really, really neat was we did a lullaby project, and we set up a recording booth at the City Heights Farmers Market for a number of Saturdays, and asked if people would want to sit down with us and talk to us about their experience of lullabies. Like, had anybody sang a lullaby to them growing up? Was there a lullaby or a song that they sang to their children or grandchildren? And one of our biggest piece of that, like I guess two parts of that project were really, one was just that we really had an intuition that there's so many stories behind our connection to music, and we were really trying to think about what's sort of a pretty universal way that humans use music. And pretty much, you know, most of us have this innate sense that babies respond to being sung to, and that we sing to them. Yeah, and then Talia and I, of course, know as music therapists innately that that's so true, and there's so many components of music and that being sung to even by a caregiver that are really supporting development and all of these things. But we really wanted to look at more of the like social, emotional side of it. And so we also, the other piece of that was just really like living in San Diego, seeing how the communities within San Diego are sometimes really divided. Like, you know, so many people that I've interacted with and talked with, because I got the privilege of like going for years to a church in City Heights and spending time in City Heights, I really knew that it was such an amazing community with individuals from all around the world.
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw out a crazy, but I think they, the IRC at one point did a study, and there were like, I mean, such a crazy amount of languages spoke in just like a 10-block radius in that area. And so many times people that live maybe in Mission Valley or another part of San Diego, live at the beaches, wouldn't even realize or have any connection with. So it was just kind of like, what if we captured some of these stories and individuals in a language that's like universal, like a mom in La Jolla could hear about a mom from Iraq talking about a lullaby that she sung, or even just hearing the song. Maybe she's not speaking about it, but just hearing the song. And that makes a little connection point. So one of the things that we really realized in that project, and Talia actually did her whole master's thesis on that project, which was really, really neat, just looking at all of the different aspects of community building, and also how you're impacted as the artist or the therapist in a way, you know, like we were kind of stepping outside of the traditional therapeutic space, but being like community musician / expressive arts therapist, you know, like space of like. So I think that that's really interesting, especially in a time, I mean, it would be really interesting to even revisit that project or those kind of ideas now, because that was even in a time, I feel like our country and our communities are even having a harder time connecting and communicating right now. So I think as artists, it's so important to ask, like, what role can we play in having conversations? Or even people, I just really think that people, we're so siloed in our little spaces and our points of like conversation and thought, and I don't even think that, I just think it's so hard to even listen to words being spoken by someone else. But I really think that, I think music can play a really, really powerful role, because I just think people will take it in and absorb it in a different way than spoken word. I mean, and I think all the arts have really a place for that. But I've been thinking about like, just how does that happen, and even how do people encounter, I mean, it's cool because I think we encounter maybe even artists that are from a different background than us, and we might like connect with them and get to know like, oh wow, I really like them, and they have a different perspective than me. So I'm really, really interested in that, because I feel like it's so powerful. And when I was doing my master's in peace studies, there were times when I kind of felt like, why am I here? And you know, I don't have a background in international relations. Like I was like, hi, I'm a music therapist. But I feel like it's always kind of forging your own path a little bit. And I really love the idea of like different fields intersecting, because I think it can be really powerful. And I mean, you know, we got to do that, you and I and some colleagues did a workshop at University of San Diego in their Peace Studies department. And I feel like there's more and more of an interest in the worlds kind of intersecting.
Yeah, I agree. And it's one of the things that one of the reasons why I'm passionate about capturing these stories of folks like you and I who are sort of quietly just kind of following our heart and our impulses and our, you know, the roads that lead to this healing work. You know, I was thinking this week, I spent a lot of time when my son is away at camps and stuff, I spend a lot of time like watching documentaries and kind of catching up on like what's going on in the world that I didn't know about. And I get, you know, I'm watching all these like Michael Moore and like, you know, stuff that's just like, oh my God, the world is going to hell in a handbasket. And like, it feels so powerless.
Yeah.
You know, and it feels like there are these huge systems in place to like squash humanity and walk away with the money and, you know, kill the earth and the animals and all these things. And I really was like, what's my part and how can I resist this or how can I create something? And I really agree that, you know, all these individuals that are just sort of called and pulled towards, you know, bringing voices that don't get heard and connecting people that don't usually connect. My last interview was with a woman who's also working in City Heights with the Media Arts Center, who comes from a dance and technology background and is now helping kids learn how to tell their stories through film. So it's like, there's just so many different, you know, people who are using the arts to bring people together and to teach empathy and perspective taking and building peace. And although sometimes it feels kind of hopeless, at the same time, it's like these little steps kind of add together to create this connected world, you know? Yeah.
And I think it is, I mean, one of the things that's wonderful about the internet and the, there's no like central, I mean, we still have our large media corporations, of course, and their voices are loud, but we have this, we now, I mean, someone like yourself or so many of us can kind of we can tell these different stories. And I think that's really important because it's important for our sanity not to become hopeless, you know, and to realize like that the positive stories don't make the big headlines a lot of the times, and that there's so many wonderful things happening in ways that people are connecting. But then also so you can kind of like connect with each other and get involved and make it, I really believe in not reinventing the wheel and not like having this like, this is my project, you know, but like all of us, hey, how can we connect and just, you know, even within like our community, you're doing that. Oh, and so many times you don't know about it. You're right. It's like, you know, it is really cool. I'm so glad you're doing this and just to lift up, you know, the role of the arts and creativity, because that is the thing that I think that when we hear these stories, also there's more of an initiative to like fund those programs and to, you know, just continue them. So.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about Amplify. Like what inspired you to start that, and what is that looking like these days?
So I think what two things inspired me to start it. One is that this interest in music therapy, doing a little bit of different kinds of work, maybe more community music therapy. And I really had an interest in terms of working with individuals with special needs and their families. I really also have had an interest in in inclusion and how can music really help, like to tell, for individuals to tell their stories. And there was like the philosophical like ideas that I wanted to explore and to have my own company to do that. But then also on a practical level, when we wanted to move as a family to the mountains and just change our lifestyle, I was really thinking about like, okay, how could I do that professionally? And it made a lot of sense for me. I thought, hey, you know, if I could like manage something a few days remotely and then also work in the city, so not be working with clients every single day. So that was another piece. And then really at the same time, I was kind of thinking about this, a really good close friend and mentor, someone that I've worked with for many years named Michelle Lazar, who runs Coast Music Therapy. And they have all of amazing IEP-based services in the schools. And they had this clinic, this private clinic that I used to work for. She reached out to me and said, hey, I'm thinking about transitioning Coast away from the private work and just doing schools. And I'm looking for somebody who would maybe be interested in taking that over. Would you have any interest? And I feel like it's crazy because at so many other points I would have been like, no, that wasn't where I was at. But it was like, this is a perfect way to start, because it's really hard to start your own company. And I mean, it's still been really hard and a huge learning curve, but it was like, I was able to, to take on the clients and start with something and take over like her rent and all of these things that, just finding a location, all of these pieces are huge. And so, and then I part of buying her out was like really paying for her mentorship. So that was huge too, because I think that I always thought that my personality, that I'm not organized enough to have my own company, or I'm definitely not the same personality as Michelle. She's like organized person you will ever meet, and just but I realized, wait, I am organized and I can develop new skills, and I can outsource things like accounting that I need help with, or, and so that's been really, really cool. I think it's neat to try something that you feel a little bit like nervous about, but that you also have an interest in. So, and then, we have our clinic. One of the big things that I wanted to do is open a new clinic in Temecula Valley, because there's absolutely no music therapy up there. And there's actually very little music therapy in all of Riverside County, which is a huge area. And I knew this because I grew up in Temecula, and I just really had this dream of bringing music therapy services to that area. And it's been a really slow growing process, and still we don't have a lot. We're not doing a ton there yet, just because of capacity. But it's been so exciting and really special to serve families who like, some of our clients were like wishing for music therapy for their kids for a number of years. And so it's been really, really neat and also fun. I love sharing about music therapy with people who've never experienced it before. So that's been really cool. And then, I think this year I'm excited about trying a few more of the, I guess, like peace building. Really, I mean, all of it I see as peace building, because really it's like nurturing. So I shouldn't say that, because I think I've also in my work expanded my view of what is peace and what is community music therapy. But doing maybe some more of those like dialogue type projects, like doing a project with USD with their Women's Peace Builders program, doing some songwriting with the women and things like that I'm really excited about, that are just a little bit different than the clinic-based work. Or so we have some contracts as well with like older adults facilities, and just about to start a contract that's been a long time in the making with the NICU at UCSD. So just like, I think one of the things that I'm really loving is the different types of work. And then I've really enjoyed, I would say managing people is probably one of the hardest things I've ever done. But it's also been really, really enjoyable. And I think that that's something that you do. And I think it really develops you as a therapist too. Just thinking about, oh, actually, how do I do this? And how can I articulate these important elements of what we do? And so.
Yeah, it sounds like a big learning curve and a big growing edge for you. Yeah. I'm always amazed when I hear what you're doing, like the broad scope of impact that you want to have. It's like you want to help everybody. So how many people are on your team?
So right now it's small now. It's kind of in different points. So I have contract music therapists that work with me, and at different points it's been like people are just doing, kind of started out larger and people were doing fewer hours, and now it's smaller. So I have 2 contract music therapists that work with me, and it's always changing kind of with what the needs are and what our contracts are and things, and then what the availability of therapists is. But I think that I kind of like smaller in a way, because I feel like I can have more connection and like regular time together and things. So that's where we're at right now, and I'm really enjoying that.
Yeah. So with all that, sort of great spread of work that you're doing, and also, with your family life and everything, what keeps you going as an artist, as a musician?
Yeah, it's such a good question. Doing, so when I first started writing or getting serious about writing music, our mutual friend, Veronica May, she connected me with now my really close friend, Alex, who is a sound engineer and a songwriter. And I can't remember. I think I was just talking to her about like, gosh, I'd love to work with someone, but I'm nervous because I can't, is it going to be so incredibly expensive to like hire musicians that play instrument? I don't play bass, and I want, how do you create an album or create songs? And she was like, you have to meet Alex, he's so fun to work with. He's so collaborative. He plays so many instruments. Like if you need bass, he'll just play bass or, add some percussion. And so I started working with him, and the process of like taking an idea of a song and then working and creating it and creating a finished product, that has been really therapeutic for me and really just nurturing. So I always call Alex my music therapist. And so that has been something. I also, being in nature, and I feel like I create and I always write and come up with ideas when I'm out like hiking or moving outside. So definitely like I mentioned, where we live, and getting involved and connecting with other artists and just dipping my toes in other creative things. Like I just signed up for an art workshop this coming weekend, just because I know that is so, so important. But I will say that it's really hard, and as a mom, I think we jumped into a season of like me starting a business. We moved into a house that had like tons of projects, and raising a toddler at the time when we moved here, my daughter was 2, and so and now she's almost 5, so she's still in like it's super like needy and phase. And so getting a little bit out of that, and I'm kind of excited like, oh, what new things will open up
Yeah.
That's my thing. And then I'm always like, I feel that I'm an ideas person. So I'm kind of always like I have this new business idea in my mind that I'm actually meeting with a friend about tonight, that I'm like, it's like percolating, and that involves a lot of songwriting stuff. So I think that stuff really energizes me and keeps me, yeah, I think it's like really nurturing, so that you can then have that output of working with people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It sounds like I mean, the fact that you just put out an album, I mean, kudos to you to doing that. When you're running a business, you know, being a mom and all those things, that's so amazing.
Well, it was like years in the making. So yeah,
I was gonna ask you, how long did that take to do?
And now Alex actually lives in Minneapolis. So
Oh,
I
wow.
flew out for one trip out there to stay with he and his girlfriend, and like finished things, and that was really fun too, and kind of cool to just work in a concentrated amount of time, because it had always been like, oh, I have a few hours here, a few hours there. So yeah, that was a long time in the making, but it feels like, I know everybody, you know, it just to me feels so important to have your own creative life and to like finish things too. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Well, and it sounds like having those collaborative relationships, and really sticking with things over time. And when you told me about the album, one of the things that really struck me that I'm really interested in as an expressive arts therapist is creating spaces to reflect on our experiences in the work that we do. And I love that you incorporated that in the songs in this album, because I think sometimes it feels like it's this private, confidential experience, and yet those things can be so impactful for us. And they are stories that are really worth, you know, sharing in terms of like the emotional quality or like the human aspect. That's so I you know I'm curious to hear about how that was for you and how it is to share that.
Yeah, I know. I'm always thinking about how can we share about what we do in a way
Yeah.
that um obviously respecting the privacy of the people we work with, and that's ethical in as therapists, but we do such powerful work, and there's so many I mean, not to like I think we get to work, I shouldn't say we do, I feel like I just always tell people like I get to work with the most amazing tool. Like music is so transformative, and I you know, so I also think I'm good at what I do, but I think that, yeah, it's really it was really neat to write some music in reflection. Especially, I was sharing with you that some of the songs came out of I haven't actually, as a, you know, across the span of my worked, a lot of the work that I've done has been with, most of the work has been with young people, but I worked for a time, for a season, especially when my daughter was a baby and little, I worked in the hospice setting. And so, I mean, something about that, what I was going through in as changing and becoming a mom, and it's such a big transformative time in your life, and then working in that setting, like I think seeing the beginning of life and then working in the end of life was just very, very powerful for me. And so I wrote a number of songs around that time, and I think that I really loved, I think that in general, one thing I saw I see it when I work with individuals. Okay, I'll start again. I think we work a lot in the like margins of society. Like when I was going to all these older adult facilities and going and spending time, all these places, I was just like, man, we don't see this no, so many people don't see these individuals. Like, we don't see the end of life a lot of times. Maybe you have a person in your life who passes away and you're with them, but these stories and this part of life is so important. Like, it has so much to teach us, the way we think about the end of life and how we want to honor things and how we want to tell those, like, these things are important. And then, you know, working with individuals with special needs, so many times these individuals are not, you know, we don't really interact with their stories. We don't really think, like, I get to see how an individual who's maybe nonverbal and who has autism, how talented they are with playing the piano, or how they can, like, type and share all these thoughts, or, you know, maybe somebody doesn't know about this. And, you know, it's just like, I think that when we also interact with this individual through the arts are really humanizing and really, like, capitalizing the human spirit and that, like, most precious part of someone. And so, I mean, it's so important, the work that nurses and other care providers do, but so many times I think also being the arts person coming into those spaces, it's like also illuminating for those people, like, oh, wow, yeah, this person loves this song. I love that song. Like, I was just thinking about their bed sore or something, you know, but, you know, it really, I think the thing that we get to do through the arts is, like, really at each point in life is, like, really connecting and honoring that, that human spark within each of us. So I think that, those songs, like, I really realized that through the arts too, that we can, because we don't have to share, like, the person's name and their age, and we can just, it's like we can share their essence and this, like, part of the story through our creative expression and how it impacts us. Like, you know, how this one song that I wrote about this woman who I just was so impacted by, you know, even in, you know, here she is on hospice. She had so much vibrancy and, like, desire to connect with life and with creating and with wearing vibrant colors. And it just really made me think about hope. And then, you know, writing about her, but in, you know, pieces of that, but then also writing about, like, just different parts, like, how do I connect with hope? And so I think that was also, working in that space was really, really hard for me at that time, because I was going through a lot of anxiety related to, I think, just becoming a mom brought out all my natural tendencies toward anxiety. And, like, so it was really hard to work in seeing diseases and the end of life and I think I was just, like, thinking about my mom and my own parents, like, you know, all of these deep things. And so writing music in that time was really, really important and therapeutic for me and helpful for me. Yeah. And I think that, it just, I have this desire to do kind of a little series of concerts over the next year and sharing the songs and some stories. And through that, I have a desire to intersect, to try and bridge that space, like, just with communities that maybe, don't think about what are the talents and, like, what is somebody who's nonverbal, what are some of their talents and how do they communicate, and just kind of bridge without, like, sharing anything about the details of a person. But I think that we are so impacted by our work, and it can turn into a way that it's really, like, draining and sometimes not like it's taking away from what we do, or I think if we keep creating, then it really is, we keep doing our work in a healthy way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love that you're kind of leading as an example in self-care in that way. And then when you get to share your music with others, then they have their own relationship with how that song is for them. And like, it just creates this wonderful sort of beautiful cycle of sharing. So where can people find the album?
Yeah, I mean, on my website, which is vanessacontopulos.com.
Okay.
And I know that's hard to spell. Vanessacontopulos.
Okay.
And there's a link there to my Bandcamp, which is a great spot to stream or pay to download. I mean, you can also, I think I love Bandcamp for artists because it definitely gives most of the funds back to the artist. But I know that we're just in a world where music is basically, it's just free and shared, and I want it to be out there. So it's also streaming on all of your platforms like Spotify and iTunes Radio and Amazon. So it's out in the world and wherever you get your music. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, but on the Bandcamp page, I have the stories behind all of the songs. Cool. If you want to like connect with a little bit more of what's behind the songs, which I know I always love to do that with artists.
Yeah. Well, I'll be sure to put those links and stuff when I get this interview out. Any last words for folks who made it all the way through?
Gosh, I don't think so. I just feel really privileged. I think if you're out there and you are, if you're an artist or you're you're working and you're just working as an artist, or you're in the expressive arts therapeutic world and you feel a little bit drained and like, why am I even doing this sometimes, I'd say just connect with because it's so nurturing. And that's why I love what you're doing here. And I think that that time that, start your own little like group with a few other people. And I think it's just so important because this work that we do is like, it's a lot of times it's just like my friend said about, like, she's a painter and she was like, I just kind of stopped for a while because I just thought like, does anybody care? Or, and she's like, it seems like nobody cares until everybody cares. Like, and I was like, I know, it's so true. And I mean, about this album, I think I remember listening to a great podcast by Seth Godin, and he has so many great resources on creativity.
I love him. Yeah.
Life. Yeah. But he was just like, I just put it out there every day, and I don't follow up really on I don't follow it and get anxious about what's happening. And I think that it has been so important for me, in the process of just like, this is what I was made to be. I was made to create and do this stuff. And I'm just going to keep doing things, keep connecting, putting things out in the world. And it's really not my job or my role to like babysit it and follow everything that it does, because it's just going to make me anxious and insecure and like,
right.
I just kind of have to. And so, yeah, I think that kind of, those two pieces of advice, like connect with other people, make it not so much about yourself, and then, just keep putting it out there in whatever way. And it has been so helpful for me because, keep doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
awesome. I love that. And those are really wise words.
Yeah.
Words. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me. I love what you do, and I love that we're connected in this big web of people who are so passionate about changing the world through the arts. So
Thank you.
yeah, thank you so much.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye.